February 13th, Crime 101 hits theaters.
What is it that you do?
I take high-value items and make them disappear.
So you're a thief.
This guy's a ghost. There's no DNA. He's in and out in seconds.
Your guy's untraceable.
Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Barry Keoghan, and Halle Berry. One crime connects them all.
We're good at this.
Yeah.
Crime 101, directed by Bart Layton. Rated R, under 17 on admitted without parent. Only in theaters February 13th.
Reporting on contaminants has caused me to ask some strange questions over the past few years. Like, how does a mass spectrometer work? And what are the ethical considerations for using zebrafish as test subjects? Or if someone, say a friend of mine, were to use their favorite rice cooker 4 times a week for about 20 years, how much of the nonstick coating might leach into their rice? Here's another thing I started wondering recently. If a PFOA molecule was sentient, what would it see? What would it feel? First, the inside of a lab. Bright fluorescent lights. Next, maybe a vat. Then the sensation of moving, the whoosh of a highway. A man in a uniform, carefully transferring liquid into a trough. A woven sheet of fabric. The burn of a 750-degree oven. Suddenly, through a cloud of smoke, green trees. Gentle wind over a New England town. Grass. Dirt. The soak of a heavy rain. Groundwater. Then some pipes. A faucet. The edges of a Brita filter. A glass with a lemon wedge. A glimpse of a sunny day. Teeth and a tongue. Esophagus. Stomach. Small intestine. Kidney. I talked to Megan Romano, an epidemiologist at Dartmouth, about what happens next. About how these chemicals go from an environmental problem to a human health problem. Megan says, generally, our bodies have systems to kick out toxic stuff.
It's almost like putting a luggage tag on your suitcase at the airport and saying, okay, this one's going out. Kindly discard of this parcel.
Then we poop or pee or sweat, and those toxins are gone. Sometimes the luggage system doesn't work so well. Chemicals like DDT and PCBs can get stuck in the fat in our organs. But forever chemicals are different. Megan calls them chemical weirdos. They have unique properties, which is part of why they've been so useful for making so many things, and also why they can be so bad for us.
And we think this is part of why PFAS seem to affect so many different aspects of health, is because they are able to kind of hang out in the blood, and that allows them to reach many, many target organs and affect many different places in the body, as opposed to really congregating in one section or another.
In other words, PFAS molecules don't get luggage tags. But they do stick to proteins in our blood. And over time, they can really build up. Remember, in water, scientists measure PFAS in parts per trillion. But in blood, they use a unit of measurement that's 1,000 times bigger, parts per billion. The average American nowadays has about 1.5 parts per billion of PFOA in our blood. That's 1,500 parts per trillion. And in the years since the C8 study, the more scientists research what these chemicals do as they accumulate in our bodies, the more havoc they seem to uncover. There's evidence that PFAS chemicals could disrupt the signals our bodies send through hormones. They could change the way our genes express themselves. They could suppress our immune systems. They could get into a cell and create particles that bounce around and cause chaos. In other words, it looks like PFAS can interfere with our cellular biology. That interference can lead to rogue cell division, uncontrolled growth, cancer. But to say that one thing can cause another, like exposure to PFOA can cause kidney cancer, doctors usually want to see a randomized clinical trial. Megan says that's the gold standard of evidence. The problem is, it would be wildly unethical to randomly expose people to toxins.
Sometimes we find ourselves at a disadvantage where we have to use observational studies. We have to look at people who were exposed and understand what's going on. And then we observe, we look and follow them and see what's happening.
Over time, if different people are exposed to the same things and experience the same symptoms, scientists start to believe it could be causal. But unlike clinical trials, observations are messy. Sometimes studies find something in one population but not another. Scientists can now say with confidence that PFOA is carcinogenic. Studies have connected it to testicular cancer and kidney cancer. But for something like breast cancer, Megan says the evidence isn't as straightforward. For Megan, that kind of uncertainty is okay. It's kind of her whole world.
Like, as an epidemiologist, I love to say this is associated with that. And I know exactly what I mean. That is a very precise technical meaning to me. And those words mean that I am neither over nor underinterpreting my findings.
This brings us to another strange question I've come across while reporting on PFOA contamination. It was posed during one of the many public meetings I've watched on YouTube by a guy who used to work for a branch of New York State's health department. He said, imagine someone is offering you a plate of cookies. Does it matter to you if they say, those cookies cause cancer? Those cookies are associated with cancer? Or there's a link between those cookies and cancer? He asked, in any of those situations, do you want to eat the cookies? This question about the cookies, it's really the heart of this whole story. Humans are notoriously bad at understanding health risks. So when you've been exposed to something that could harm you, and you can't find a clear answer about what might happen next, what do? How do you move forward?
Yeah, we won, but the door prize was, illness.
That is my biggest worry, that they, or even us, will be affected 10, 15 years down the road, and what is justice for that? I don't know.
From the document team at New Hampshire Public Radio, I'm Mara Hoplamazian. And this is the final episode of Safe to Drink.
This podcast is supported by The RealReal. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The RealReal.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The RealReal? Game changer. I earn more, and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 40 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The RealReal than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The RealReal. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And only for the month of January, earn up to $550 extra when you sell with The RealReal. That's right, up to $550 extra. Go to therealreal.com to get started. Earn up to $550 extra this month at therealreal.com. Terms apply.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay, no insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
For a long time, it was hard to get your blood tested for PFAS, to get proof this stuff was actually building up in your body. Blood tests were easier to come by if you lived in a place with known contamination, like Hoosick Falls. New York State's health department started offering blood tests there in 2016. One person who took them up on it was Lorene Hackett.
We got the blood test results back, and my family's levels were extraordinary.
Remember how the average level of PFOA in human blood these days is about 1.5 parts per billion? Lorene's blood and her family's blood were testing in the hundreds of parts per billion.
I'm not an activist, but I was pissed off, so I'm a pissivist. That's how everything just pissed me off. I was pissed. I was beyond angry, knowing that now this was done to us.
Like pretty much everyone else I talked to, Lorene hadn't heard of PFAS chemicals before she found out they were in her water and blood. She started reading health studies, the same ones Michael Hickey and Lorene Allen read. In fact, Lorene Allen got some of her research directly from Lorene Hackett. The Lorenes, they have kind of a reputation among PFAS activists, especially Hackett. A couple people told me, you don't mess with Lorene Hackett. When we met up, I got what they were saying. She's got a good hard stare, the kind that makes you squirm a little. She told me she was healing from a hip replacement. By her count, her 16th surgery. Lorene has had a tough medical journey. After she had her second daughter, she had a hysterectomy. She got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in her 20s and a few other related conditions. She had breast cancer.
I could be the walking billboard of this can go wrong, and this can go wrong, and this can go wrong. And sadly, so are my children and my grandchildren.
After she got her family's blood test results, Lorene started a Twitter account. She took a photo of her grandson, holding up a sign with his blood levels on it. She took one of her granddaughter, too. She posted them in black and white.
And all I could think of was, well, if you won't hear us, all are yelling, you're going to see us.
Suddenly, the photos were everywhere. Other people in Hoosick Falls started posting similar ones, with the number of PFOA parts per billion in their blood. The images made it into newspapers. Lorene started hearing from people across the world. With her grandson as a profile photo, Lorene posted news articles and health studies. Her Twitter profile became kind of like an unofficial library on forever chemicals.
When there's no answers, you just like, oh, okay, I got just dealt a really bad hand, and then to start finding out through health studies and all that research that, oh, well, this has an effect and this has an effect and PFOA is linked to these, and the light bulbs start going off. And so I just kept digging.
Remember, the C8 study found probable links to 6 illnesses: kidney cancer, testicular cancer, thyroid disease, ulcerative colitis, high cholesterol, and pregnancy-induced hypertension. You might also remember that study was part of a major lawsuit settlement and was paid for by DuPont itself. The phrase probable links has meanings that are both scientific and legal. People in the Ohio River Valley with some of those conditions sued DuPont and won. Scientists have studied PFOA's connection to lots of other health outcomes, including some of Lorene Hackett's diagnoses. But there's nothing like the C8 study that legally defines how much proof would be enough to hold up in court. So Lorene says she's still waiting for the day a lawyer decides to take up a case like hers.
How many studies does it take? I ask the question all the time, I can't get an answer. How many studies does it take to prove a chemical is linked to a health condition?
The Loreens say proving these links is about more than finding an explanation for suffering. It's also about holding polluters accountable.
People don't accept responsibility when they do harm unless you can prove it and make them. And how do we do that? We have only one venue. We can raise our voices, we can say all the right things, everybody can listen and say, oh my God, that's terrible. But that doesn't do a damn thing. It's the legal system that actually delivers that.
Over in Merrimack, New Hampshire, Lorene Allen began pushing state officials to do a health study. Her hope was that they could start saying with more certainty what St. Gobain's contamination had done to her community's health. But she says her pushing wasn't very well received.
And then I said, all right, I'm going to have to do this on my own.
Remember, Lorene is not a scientist, and she knew she probably wasn't going to be able to prove, once and for all, that PFOA caused particular health effects. Still, with help from a nonprofit and other people in the community, she designed a survey. It was low-key, a link to an online form on flyers at the library and the town hall. Lorene also organized a team that went door to door in their neighborhoods. She says sometimes when she was door knocking, people asked her the same questions state officials were getting. Am I sick because of the water? Some of the door knockers gave the answer a scientist might. We can't really say. But Lorene took a different approach.
I'd be like, don't say that. You don't have to say, yes, that's it. But don't say we can't really say. Just listen. People know what they know. And if they say, I know this and this is my truth, who am I to say otherwise?
Almost 600 people took the survey. It's only about 2% of Merrimack's population. But for Lorene, it was a big deal. Even with the survey's obvious limitations, researchers at the University of Vermont analyzed the results. And they noted some red flags that begged more research, like higher numbers of reproductive, autoimmune, and kidney disorders among kids, and more health concerns among the people who lived in Merrimack longer. Eventually, the state of New Hampshire did start its own health study. And in one way, it seemed to vindicate Lorene and the other activists. The study found evidence that the rate of kidney cancer in Merrimack is higher than in the rest of New Hampshire. 38% higher. But the study couldn't say exactly why. The authors, including Dartmouth epidemiologist Megan Romano, said they'd need to do another, even bigger study to determine that. So, more potential evidence, but no solid proof.
Can we prove this? I don't know. But again, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it swims like a duck, I think we're looking at a duck here.
After Wendy Thomas found PFOA in her water, it suddenly seemed like there might be an explanation for the health problems she and her family were having. Issues with their joints, cholesterol, and kidneys. Wendy survived breast cancer. There are 3 small dogs buried in their backyard, and a 4th cremated. They all died of cancer. And it's not just her family. Wendy says she sees it all over her neighborhood.
The house across the street, which has a private well, which is also contaminated, the dad in that house died of kidney cancer. Further up the street, they have a private well that's contaminated. The son died of colon cancer. The father died. He had colon cancer, but it was really his bladder cancer that eventually killed him. And then our neighbor next door, the dad currently has prostate cancer that has metastasized to his bones. He seems to be doing pretty well, but that's a lot of quacking in just one street.
I've heard this kind of thing from a lot of people in Merrimack. When it seems like everyone around you is sick, it's hard not to see every illness as a dot to connect. There's this idea that's getting more traction in the United States. Call it TikTok wellness culture, or the Make America Healthy Again movement, or the more radical parts of Crunchy Mom Reddit. The idea is that the whole world is full of toxins, and we can't trust government agencies or academic institutions to keep us safe. While working on this story, I've found so many echoes of this feeling. Of course, unlike forever chemicals, there is a lot of science backing up the safety of things public health officials tell us to put in our bodies on purpose, like fluoride and vaccines. But to hear your water has been contaminated by a huge corporation, to get confusing information about whether that water is safe to drink, to see people getting sick all around you, and then to be told, we don't know if these two things are connected. It's no wonder so many people feel like they need to do their own research, protect themselves. And in many ways, that's exactly what people in Merrimack did.
You know, a lot of people ask me, why haven't you left? Why haven't you gone someplace safer? And it's like, if I leave, who is going to be staying here to fight and do the work that's necessary to keep this town safe?
Pretty soon after Merrimack found out their water was contaminated, Wendy got to work. She connected with a group of women in town. In 2018, 3 of them decided to run for state office. A reporter called them the Water Warriors. The name stuck. And they won.
I mean, we were evangelical about PFAS when we got up to the State House. You know, I would introduce myself. I'd say, hey, I'm Wendy Thomas. I'm from Merrimack. Do you know about PFAS? And I would they're like, I don't know about PFAS, but let me eat my lunch and we can talk about it. And I'd be like, yeah, eat your lunch and let's talk.
Wendy was joining the ranks of PFAS advocates across the country. The Loreens helped start a group called the National PFAS Contamination Coalition. The casts of all the local productions of this play were starting to organize, from New York and New Hampshire to North Carolina and Washington state. PFAS started to become more of a household name. The need to do something was becoming harder to ignore. So state governments started doing something. In New Hampshire, one of the main things state lawmakers did was to tell regulators to create statewide limits for PFOA and a small group of other PFAS chemicals in drinking water. Remember, New Hampshire got sued for setting those limits. But eventually, they were adopted, and the state became one of a handful with legal, enforceable limits for PFAS in drinking water. When New Hampshire adopted those in 2019, they were some of the lowest in the country, 12 parts per trillion for PFOA. It took the feds another 5 years. But in 2024, the EPA finally announced their drinking water standard for a few PFAS chemicals. The thing Rob Bilott, the lawyer from the West Virginia case, had been asking them to do for more than a decade. For PFOA, the federal limit is now 4 parts per trillion. 4. But federal regulators say if the level was set solely based on health, not taking cost or feasibility into consideration, the limit would be 0. In other words, there is no level of PFOA in water that is safe to drink. In many ways, Wendy says, the Water Warriors won their battle. Their research and their advocacy made a difference. But it's hard to say how much of a difference.
It's a bittersweet win, because all of us, all 3 of us are sick. We've all got health issues. Our families are suffering. So, we won, but the door prize was, illness.
The Water Warriors and other PFAS advocates helped prevent future New Hampshire residents from being exposed at high levels. But what about all the people who had already been exposed? And what about the miles of soil and water around Merrimack, still contaminated with a colorless, odorless chemical? That's next after the break. By the way, if you want to know whether your drinking water has forever chemicals in it, we've put together some resources for you. Find those on the episode 4 page of our website, nhpr.org/safe to drink.
Hey, I'm Jason Moon. I'm one of the producers of this series. You probably know that documentary podcasts like Safe to Drink take a huge amount of work. Mara didn't just hop into a studio one day and talk into a microphone. Mara has been reporting on PFAS contamination in New Hampshire for years. And then we spent another whole year working just on Safe to Drink. We collected and read thousands of pages of documents. We gathered more than 80 hours of raw audio from interviews with more than 30 people, traveling hundreds of miles in the process. And then, to make sure we got the story right, we hired an independent fact-checker to confirm every detail. In the script that I'm looking at right now, there's a footnote after almost every single sentence that lists the sourcing. Point is, making this kind of podcast is expensive. It would have been a lot cheaper if Mara had just hopped into a studio one day. But we think it's worth it to make a series that's rigorously reported, that's accurate, and that you'll actually want to listen to. And here's the truth. We can't do this work without your support, especially now. Federal cuts to NHPR, the station that produces this podcast, have reduced our funding by hundreds of thousands of dollars. You might have heard a few ads while listening to this podcast. Let me be real, they do not come close to covering our costs. Public media is possible because of public support. You can make a gift right now on your phone with Apple Pay or on the app of your choice. Just hit the link in the show notes, and seriously, thank you.
It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a running back delivered, but you can get baby back ribs delivered. A strong defense? No. A strong deodorant? Yes. A six-pack of abs? Nope. Six-pack of beer? Yes. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol 21 plus and in select cities. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
As New Hampshire lawmakers were trying to make sure this kind of thing wouldn't happen again, Saint-Gobain was chugging along, still coating fabrics in their factory by the Merrimack River. Around 2018, testing showed the plant was emitting much less PFOA than it used to. But 190 different PFAS compounds were still coming out of the stacks. State regulators estimated the plant was releasing more than 850 pounds of forever chemicals per year, a quarter pound every hour. Saint-Gobain has always insisted that they're not necessarily responsible for the contamination in Merrimack. But by 2019, the state of New Hampshire had determined Saint-Gobain's emissions did put PFAS chemicals into drinking water, and they were continuing to contribute to the problem. State regulators said they didn't have the legal authority to tell Saint-Gobain to shut down the plant altogether. Instead, they were asking the company to install a new device that would limit the pollution, something called a regenerative thermal oxidizer. It took Saint-Gobain almost a year and a half to install that device, which meant with each passing day, more PFAS chemicals kept going into the air.
They were still running. Just full operations, still making money, still doing their thing.
You remember Ben Pierce. He found the cases of bottled water in his driveway. When New Hampshire first started investigating the PFOA contamination, they did a lot of testing. Air, soil, public water. They also tested private wells. It was a big undertaking, so they started with wells closest to Saint-Gobain. Then they began testing wells further and further out, until they reached the town of Londonderry, where the Pierces live. Eventually, Ben and Jen Pierce pieced together that one of the first wells the state tested in their neighborhood was their own. It was tested about a month before they moved into their house in 2019. Now they were getting bottled water from St. Gobain. But only a handful of other homes in Londonderry got tested around the same time the Pierces did. And they realized, a lot of their neighbors, they might not know that their water could be contaminated. They started to feel, strangely, lucky.
At the very least, it was months that we weren't just drinking the water, which our neighbors were,
At the time, Ben and Jen weren't getting much information from the state or from St. Gobain. They decided if they wanted their community to know what was happening, they'd have to take things into their own hands. So in the fall of 2019, about a month after their first bottled water delivery, they wrote a letter.
Hi, neighbor. We live at and our well water tested high for PFAS, a chemical pollutant found in air and groundwater. This means our water is not safe to drink, cook with, or brush our teeth. It is supposedly safe to wash dishes, clothes, etc. The Merrimack company responsible for this pollution and contamination, St. Gobain, is providing us with
The Pierces also gave their neighbors detailed advice on how to file a request for the state to test their wells. Advice that was hard to find anywhere else.
Click on Getting Your Well Water Tested in the drop-down menu. Click on Private Well Testing Request Form on the side menu. Good luck and be safe, the Pierces.
You can tell I'm a teacher because I had to put all the directions, but it was tough to find, and I sought it out, so I wanted to be very clear. I wanted people to not be shy about it.
They drove around the neighborhood and stopped at every home to drop the letter off. Jen says it just felt like the neighborly thing to do.
We did hear back from a few neighbors about, hey, we're getting bottled water now. Thank you for giving us that letter. We didn't know about it.
As the state was testing all these wells, they were also negotiating with St. Gobain about what to do for people whose wells were contaminated. Eventually, they struck a deal. They drew a big ring on a map, with St. Gobain's Merrimack plant in the middle. The company agreed to deliver safe drinking water only to the people with contaminated wells inside that ring, which covers about 65 square miles. As of now, state officials have tested about 4,000 wells inside that ring. When New Hampshire adopts the legal federal limit for PFOA, 4 parts per trillion, about 3/4 of those wells within the ring will be over the limit. But the state has also been testing wells outside of the ring. And officials say it's clear that there's contaminated water far beyond this legal border. The boundary of that ring goes right through the Pierces' neighborhood.
You can see it from here. It's like High Range Road is the boundary, and people right on the other side of that street don't get it for free, and they have the same problem.
Ben says he doesn't talk to their neighbors about the water very much.
I think people are private about it. I think even though we're all dealing with the same thing, most of us, again, it's not everybody, but I think there's still because when you talk to your family about it and your friends about it, there is a little bit of your house is broken, I don't know. It's slightly embarrassing.
It's hard to know when this will all be fixed, or even what fixed would look like. For homes with contaminated wells, St. Gobain has agreed to pay for home filtration systems or connections to nearby public water systems. But Ben and Jen and other people in Londonderry are still waiting to see when that might happen.
We're just stuck in this area that's in limbo right now. So we're just waiting and waiting and waiting.
There's another thing making the Pierces feel even more uncertain about where this is all going. In the summer of 2023, St. Gobain announced it would be shutting down the Merrimack plant. The company said it was part of a restructuring. More than 160 workers were either transferred to one of dozens of the company's other manufacturing plants or laid off. Saint-Gobain demolished their factory. Where the plant used to stand, there's now a bare concrete slab, some trees and soil, a brook that flows into the Merrimack River. The groundwater on the site is testing about 1,000 times higher than New Hampshire's drinking water limit for PFOA. There are also high levels of PFOA in the soil. Saint-Gobain has submitted some plans for remediating the site, but according to state regulators, it's a stretch to call what they're proposing remediation. They want to do something called natural attenuation. It's a fancy way of saying, don't do anything and let the PFAS disappear on its own. A tough sell for a so-called forever chemical. So Saint-Gobain is gone from Merrimack, but there are other big questions that aren't going anywhere. Like, who's paying for all the different parts of this cleanup project? The company is required to find permanent solutions, like connections to public water systems, for more than 1,800 homes with private wells. In the meantime, they say they've distributed nearly 500,000 gallons of bottled water. Meanwhile, Merrimack taxpayers spent $14.5 million on a new filtration system for their public water. Saint-Gobain agreed to contribute more than $3 million to that project. But the town will have to keep paying to take care of the filters after they fill up with PFAS. Merrimack's water system is suing Saint-Gobain and other companies that used PFAS to try and recoup some of the costs. And over 1,000 people who drank the water and who think it made them and their families sick or worry they could get sick in the future, they have a case that's been snaking its way through New Hampshire courts for years. One thing people really wanted the company to pay for is called medical monitoring. Basically, extra careful checkups with doctors for a long time to try and catch any illness early. In other states like New York, Saint-Gobain has been forced to help pay for 10 years of medical monitoring. In New Hampshire, the issue went to the state Supreme Court. Lawyers for Saint-Gobain argued, exposure to PFOA is different from, say, a car crash. If you get injured because someone rear-ended you, you might sue them over that injury. But with PFAS exposure, Saint-Gobain argued there's no way to know if a person is injured. There's just the possibility of an injury at some point down the road. They also said medical monitoring wouldn't be feasible because too many people have been exposed to PFAS. Or at least it would be really, really expensive. The Saint-Gobain lawyer told the judge, "You and I have never met a person in southern New Hampshire who wouldn't be part of this class." In the end, New Hampshire's Supreme Court justices sided with Saint-Gobain. So in New Hampshire, no matter what a jury decides in their class action case, people will be on their own when it comes to tracking their health. The Pierces only drank their contaminated water for a few months. The chemicals can get into our bodies through our skin, but all the official guidance says the stuff the Pierces are still using their water for, showering, washing dishes, filling up their backyard pool, that should be okay. Still, Jen says sometimes she'll have a night of worry about her kids, just full of fear for their future. I tried to ask Jen, how do you live with this?
You have to just move forward and not think about those things all the time. But that is my biggest worry, that they, or even us, will be affected 10, 15 years down the road. And what is justice for that? I don't know. Yeah. There is no justice for that, I think, if that were to happen. But right now, that it hasn't happened, so it's hard to live in that space, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're realistic about the fact that it's really, at the end of the day, it's an inconvenience for us at this point. What we're probably not realistic about is that it is way more than an inconvenience, that it is a legitimate health risk for our children. And at some point, like maybe we'll feel different about the idea of justice. Yeah.
While we were talking, Ben and Jen and I were standing in their kitchen. Parker and Kinsey were drifting in and out of the room, going off to play when they got bored of my questions. But when their parents started talking about cancer, they both hovered a little closer.
Do you guys think about the scariness of our water? Like,
I didn't know I could get cancer.
Yeah, that's the worry. I mean, that's why it's not safe to drink.
We kept chatting. I think I was feeling uncomfortable. I wanted to reassure the kids that their family was following the rules, taking all the precautions. They weren't exposed for nearly as long or at nearly as high levels as other people I've talked to. Parker seemed like he was getting nervous. He was smiling and laughing, but I was an anxious kid. I could tell something was up.
I have to admit, I think like a couple weeks ago, it was in the morning, and I was really tired, and I woke up, and I got dressed, and then I went to brush my teeth, and I used the tap water.
Did you really?
Yeah, just once. Because I was upstairs, and the thing upstairs wasn't filled, and I had nothing up there, and I didn't want to walk all the way downstairs.
Oh, so it was like a conscious, like, I'm gonna live on the edge, ride the lightning.
I was like, it's probably fine, and so I
think one toothbrushing is probably okay.
I just wet my toothbrush with it.
Risk management isn't the hardest part, Ben told me. It's the emotional management. It's trying to find the right amount of fear to have when there's a toxin all around you, and all you can do is wait to find out whether something bad is going to happen. Safe to Drink is reported by me, Mara Hoplamazian. Additional reporting and production by Jason Moon, who also mixed all of the episodes, drove us all around Vermont and New York, and created all of the music you hear in this podcast. Our editors are Daniela Ali and Katie Culinary. Editing help from Daniel Barrick, Rebecca Lavoie, Taylor Quimby, Elena Eberwein, and Lau Guzman. A very special thanks to everyone whose work and support made this project possible, including Lauren Chuljan, Casey McDermott, Kate Dario, Julia Furukawa, Zoe Knox, James Freeman, and my siblings Lena and Leo. And a huge shout out to all of the excellent journalists whose work I relied on while reporting this story, many of them local reporters just like us at NHPR, including Annie Ropeek, Mariah Blake, Sharon Lerner, Nathaniel Rich, Howard Weiss-Tisman, and Brendan J. Lyons. Fact-checking by Danya Suleiman, legal review by Jeremy Eggleton. Photos by Raquel Zaldivar with the New England News Collaborative. Sarah Plord designed our website, nhpr.org/safe-to-drink, where you can check out the Merrimack Community Health Survey, maps of New Hampshire's PFAS sampling efforts, the lawsuits we talked about, and a bunch of other photos and documents. Nate Hedgie designed our logo. Dan Barrick is NHPR's news director. Rebecca Lavoie is our director of on-demand audio, and Leah Todd-Lynn is vice president of audience strategy. Safe to Drink is a production of the Document Team at New Hampshire Public Radio.
Hello, this is Jack Wilson, the host of the History of Literature podcast. For the past 10 years, I've been talking to novelists, biographers, and scholars about the greatest books in the history of the world and the men and women who wrote them. Like our recent episodes on Dante in Love, a starter pack of 10 Indian classics, the pop culture that influenced Sylvia Plath, and a talk with scientist and novelist Alan Lightman about the wonders of nature. Join us at the History of Literature podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.